I assume you do go out now and again.
Yes. Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's escapade into Victorian London in the year 1888, when we enjoy a bit of Call of Cthulhu tonight. And the investigators have just finished their first job last week, and so they're up and ready for a new job tonight. It will be starting off, and so if you're new to the stream, then you will be able to see it right from the beginning. Now, sadly, Chuggerwugger, who plays Willard Peabody, sadly just left about 3 minutes before 7. So we've tried to get in touch with him, but we can't get any reply at the moment. So we're just going to continue on. I've managed to save his slot in Zoom. So if he comes back, then please do let us know in chat, because I'm not watching the Zoom, and all of a sudden more people will come out and we won't be happily sat in our boxes anymore. So yeah, so before we go any further, I'm going to allow the players to introduce who they are and who they will be playing tonight. And so, Mr. Pickles, we are going straight to you.
I am Mr. Pickles, this guy in the rumpled shirt. I am playing Aaron Webber, an inquiry agent in 1888 Victorian London. He's kind of a rough, aggressive, brawling kind of sort. Appears rugged and weary to most people, and that's mostly because he works better with animals than with humans. He likes the stray cats of London. And more than anything, he just wants to catch some killers. And with that, I'm going to throw the microphone, or Victorian London equivalent, over to Longshanks.
Hi guys, thank you very much, Mr. Pickles. Hi guys, I'm Longshanks CPG. Tonight I'm playing Dr. Gordon King. He, as the hint at the beginning of his name, he is a doctor. He's a medical doctor. He has a small sort of practice out of his house where he treats the quality of patients, that sort of thing. Victorian medicine is mainly sort of drinking lots of healthy teas, taking the odd pill and medicine. They were quite sort of like the sort of things that were in the medicines are a little bit scary. There's sort of like lots of horrible chemicals, lots of horrible metals and those sort of things. And scarily, there's lots of now A-class drugs if you're in the UK. But there we go. So he treats patients, and he's got caught up in this investigating lark with Peabody and Webber, thank you. I remember the first name. I couldn't remember the surname. With Webber, through the gentlemen's club that they all belong to. And I'll stop rambling and pass on to Inwells.
Yeah, fantastic. So last week sorry, just to give you a bit of background, Willard Peabody is a photographer for almost like a freelance photographer that goes around taking images, etc. He's very upper class. He thinks he's going to get through. He's hoping to get through life by charming his way to the top, interacting with the upper class or the similar social class as him, and slowly working his way up. So he has a bit of he enjoys socializing and socialiting and engaging with the upper class, but is not all that caring and considerate to the lower class, and he certainly would not be befriending or charming them at all. Okay, so those are the three investigators, and like I said right at the beginning, they're actually living in London in 1888, and the last 2 weeks, they completed an adventure relating to a wonderful magician or spiritualist called the Great Raspini, and sadly one of the club's members daughters had gone missing, Rose, and they eventually made their way underneath the Egyptian Hall Theatre, and they managed to solve the clues, fight a rather tall guy who looked very zombified, and met in the classic, if you come one step forward, closer, I'm going to flip the switch. And sadly the switch was flipped and Rose was nicely electrocuted, but the investigators managed to demonstrate that it was the great Respini who actually escaped through a secret door at the bottom of the theatre. And so the investigators sort of like went off knowing how to improve in future times and started to settle back down to life, which leads me to the first question, guys. The interesting thing is, what have your investigators been doing over the last 2 weeks? About 2 weeks has passed in Victorian London. So I'm interested to know what activities, what would you have been doing as investigators over those 2 weeks?
Well, Dr. King, first of all, would have been treating himself because he took a lot of rather nasty rat bites. So
he certainly did, yes.
Lots of very nasty rat bites. He has 2 out of 9 health at the moment. So he'd have been treating himself for that, for like bathing the wounds and taking lots of his own medicine, self-medicating, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He would have also been running his doctor's practice as per normal.
Cool.
So he would be seeing sort of like the normal sort of high class, high quality patients, couple of call outs, those sort of things. I think there was a birth from a few doors down the street that he attended as an emergency call out.
He delivered.
He delivered a baby.
Cool.
What else? Oh, there was he probably, because he always sees this lady. It's one of his, because his grandfather taught him to be a doctor, because doctors learnt through apprenticeships in Victorian times. He would have most likely have seen one particular patient that was one of his grandfather's patients, and he's inherited. Old Mrs. Doris Betty.
Cool.
She tends to see him almost daily, not quite daily, but it's one of those old ladies that there's always something wrong with her, and he always gives her some sort of it's like, oh, we'll take lots of rest and lots of fresh walk, lots of walks in Hyde Park and
morning constitutionals,
those sorts of things. It's like gives her tells her to make sure she has her chamomile tea and those sorts of things.
Yeah, cool. And what about Mr. Webber? What's Mr. Webber been up to over the last 2 weeks?
Weber has 2 goals over these 2 weeks, and the first is handling his damage that he received from Otto. Because Otto had bit me like a weirdo in the dark dungeons. So I'd probably be seeking out Dr. King to help me with
disinfectant.
Yeah, and probably a little bit of the medicine.
Yeah.
Doing some dual sharing that medicine, I'm hoping. But otherwise, his main goal is just to be searching for Respini, talking to anybody, mostly searching in a sense of going places and trying to casually bring up Respini, see if anybody's seen him. Because you said that foul magician had escaped, correct?
Yes, yeah. He certainly had escaped.
I'm trying to get revenge for Sybil and for Rose. I'm gonna find it.
They're racking up now, aren't they?
I have two lives on my shoulders now that I have to find for.
Brilliant. So you, as you well known, and as you stated right at the beginning, you often take part or attend the Carlton Club. Which is a very nice, well presented, much for the gentlemen around London. You often attend there and you meet there and you sort of like get to know the people who surround it. And remember, there's lots of these clubs throughout London, and many of them have very specific requirements to join it. Luckily, the Carlton Club doesn't, and so you've got into the club via various methods, whether or not it be by inheritance or via your own goodwill or payment. And you've been in there for the 2 weeks. Your hit points will be back up. So if you took any hit points, then you can put it back up to maximum. I think we did the skill rolls last week for improvement. So that's all done. And it's while you're sat in the Carlton Club and you, Dr. King, you're there, and Mr. Peabody and Mr. Webber, you're all sort of like sat round because you started to form that friendship bond, that understanding that you're probably wanting the same things in life, and also sharing an interest in the unusual. And whether or not that is to prove its existence or to disprove its existence depends on the characters you are playing. But generally, you have that feeling that only by encountering more things would you actually get a clear understanding of what's happening. And it's while this is all happening that Dr. King, you actually have a telegram delivered to you, and it's from your nephew. Your nephew is called Alan Pace. So how's, obviously he's your nephew, but how is Alan Pace related to you, Dr. King?
He is most likely going to be my mother's brother's son.
Okay.
So my son's son. Or however it works out. However it works out, yeah. Yeah.
Well, Alan, as you know, Dr. King, is a tailor. That's his trade here in London. He owns his own shop. He's in his mid-30s. He's very tall and thin, and he actually lives above his shop. And it's not a great shop, but it's making a living from it, and quite a comfortable living. The tailor shop is actually not far from Piccadilly Circus in London, and he sort of like is really interested in clothing and birds of the feather variety. He has a respectable business, and he produces very fine garments. It's not sort of like trash or really badly sewn or anything like that. It's quite fine. He actually was in the army before he actually came to London, and he has seen several battles, etc., and he was wounded once, although it wasn't that serious. It wasn't sort of like major, but it did mean that he had time away from the front line. But once the war, he was at war over in Africa, but once the war sort of like stopped there, he came back over and set up his own business. Anyway, the telegram has arrived, and he is really keen. Today is Monday of the week, and he's really keen to meet you and any of your colleagues on Thursday to just have a chat and have a general discussion, catch up, uncle to nephew, having a good chin wag, etc. And you seem very happy for this to happen. It'd be really nice, and you probably decide that you're going to take Mr. Peabody and Mr. Webber along with you, since and maybe even Alan might actually join the group as an additional member. But you're not too sure, and it's not that's not what's actually going to happen. And so from Monday to Wednesday, you carry on. You're meeting them on Thursday. You carry on your normal everyday lives, healing your wounds, catching up with what's going on in London. Mr. Webber, you're constantly, checking out the newspapers, trying to see whether or not there's any sighting. Can you just make me a library use roll?
I would absolutely love to. Let's see, and we do green buttons.
Yeah. So you actually you do find an interesting piece of news in a newspaper that actually states that, as you know, the Great Raspini was moving on to another town, and he was actually due to go to Bristol. Unfortunately, according to the news article, many people were disappointed and are saying that they want their money back because he had 3 days there that was completely packed out and sold in advance to rather a whole load of socialites in Bristol. But unfortunately, he never turned up at the theatre. He was meant to be there 1 day beforehand. He didn't turn up, and so Bristol and the upper class are rather in somewhat of an angry state of mind. When you read the paper, because you got a hard success, which is good, when you actually read it and sort of like take into account the fine print, it seems like he never ever arrived. It's not as if he didn't turn up for the night, i.e. he arrived and didn't turn up. It would appear that he never actually even arrived in Bristol at all. And so there's quite a discussion going on in the papers about where he is, and those classic headlines of, illusionist disappears, or the disappearing illusionist, and things like that. So it's quite the newspapers are almost like having a field day with it, and things like the Daily Graphic, they sort of like the punches of this era, when it's just sort of like has a whole lot of cartoons in it, but mainly fixating on satire and irony and things like that. There's a whole load of cartoons coming on about the great disappearing Raspini. And apart from that, there seems to be nothing really to go on. You get to Wednesday and you decide to meet, all of you, at the Carlton, and then to go to Alan is going to come here. You're going to dine within the Carlton at about midday, and everything seems to be going according to plan. You all arrive, and Alan Pace sort of like comes in, and he's looking quite exasperated, and almost like he sort of like comes in, and he's got a very smart suit on and like a trilby hat, and he sort of like walks in, and the doorman sort of like takes people's hats and coats. The doorman sort of like holds out his hands in preparation, and Alan sort of like walks straight past him, and the doorman has to go, sir, and he sort of goes, oh yes, sorry, and comes back and hands over his coat and hat, and then he sort of like comes into the main room where you're at, and he sort of like looks round, and then he sort of like goes and sort of like waves to you, Dr. King, and sort of like comes over and sort of like sits down in his place at the table. And he says, "Oh, sorry, and I'm not too sure. I know my uncle here. Who might you people be?"
Oh yes. Sorry. Allow me to introduce two of my recent companions. This is my good friend Aaron Webber, and this is my good friend Peabody.
Very, very, very pleased to meet you. I'm really sorry to say this, Uncle. We were due to dine today? Well, unfortunately, I'm having to leave straight
Oh.
away. I'm having to go to Dover, would you believe?
Oh, how come? Is it something that I should be worried about, or?
Well, it's a very sad case of affairs. It would appear that one of my ex-army companions, Herbert Crouch, has sadly passed away. And I mean, he was a bit of a loner, and I thought it was only right that I should make the journey down to Dover and attend his funeral.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Yes. Yeah. But it's still sad. That did you know him? You said he was a bit of a loner. So did you know him very well?
Oh, we served together.
Well, I gather that, but
Yes. We served together, and so yes, I'm heading down to Dover. Ghastly place. But anyway, yes, he
are
apparently.
you going by coach or train? Coach or train?
Oh, steam. Yes, most definitely. Yeah, a hansom cab all that way would not be pleasant on the old bones. Yes, so I will have to go, which means that I will not be able to attend our luncheon at all.
Well, that's a crying shame, but it's totally understandable in those circumstances.
Right then, so I will be heading off then.
Allow me to walk you out.
Oh no, it's absolutely fine. I can find my own way out. That's not a problem at all. So, well, have a nice time.
That's right. Thank you for letting us know, and safe travels.
Yes, okay, thank you. And he turns around and he walks back to the doorman and he picks up his coat and hat and leaves. What would you like to do?
That was a little bit odd. He seemed a little bit rattled about the whole experience. Wouldn't you say, Weber?
Yeah. Can I rule psych? I probably should have rolled psychology while he's here. Would I be able to roll psychology to think about how he was holding his demeanor?
Yeah, by all means.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, he seems to be he's telling the truth to start off with. It seems to have actually, there was no sign of him lying or anything like that. He sounded a bit perturbed about the guy's death, and you almost like got that feeling that he wanted to almost like ask something, but you weren't too sure what. It was as if he was waiting for something to happen or something like that, but then he just sort of like thought, right, okay then, and headed off.
Quick question: Did he say how Herbert? He said Herbert, right?
Yeah.
Did he say how he died?
No, he did not say how he died. He didn't mention it.
I'm gonna glance over at Dr. King and say, I feel like your nephew had more to say.
Yes. It does seem that way, doesn't it? Thinking about it.
Dover, that's
It's a long way away.
yeah, but there's potential. We might find some clues towards Raspini. Dover.
Raspini in Dover? Why would you go there? Surely I would have thought he'd be lying low somewhere as opposed to... Well, I suppose he could be fleeing the country, but I don't think we cause that much of a fuss.
I'm gonna toss the newspaper that I had gotten that has the story about Raspini and Bristol. I'm gonna toss that onto the coffee table or on the counter, whatever's between us. And I put my finger on it and say, I found some evidence that he didn't make it where he was supposed to. Surely he could be hiding here, or he could be anywhere.
Well, I mean, anywhere more likely, but yes. Why Dover?
I don't know. I thought maybe you might want to see your nephew through this trauma. I know when Sybil died, I could have used somebody.
Yes, perhaps I'll. And King sort of like trails off in thought for a few moments and goes, perhaps I might try and catch him at the train station. He lives near Piccadilly, I think. So I'll try there.
At the very least, maybe we can find out if it was a death that made sense. I get the feeling he was perturbed. Maybe something is unsolved.
It could be. Yeah, he seemed a little bit on edge, didn't he, about the whole situation?
Yeah. Well, in that case, it's settled. Let's go find your nephew.
Okay. We'll try a shop near Piccadilly and then head over to Piccadilly.
Yeah. Grab the newspaper, of course.
Yeah, I mean, from how he was dressed, etc., you think that he was probably heading straight for the station. So, taking on board what Mr. Webber has stated, you sort of like think that the best place to probably try to catch him is at the train station, and rather than going straight there, because if you went to his house first, you might miss him, So you settle on going to the train station straight away, and yeah, I mean, his train didn't leave for almost like 2 hours from this point, so you can find him there. He seems to be sat on one of the platform benches. He has his brown travel bag with him, like a brown, rather cuboid suitcase, and he sort of like sat there with that, and he sort of like, he's got his overcoat on and his hat, and you sort of like arrive, and he sort of like turns to you and go, "Oh, uncle, what are you doing here?"
You left in rather a hurry, and you seemed to like that you wanted to say something more. Sorry, I had my head in other business. I was up late last night delivering a child from 2 doors down.
He sort of like pauses for a moment. He says, "No, nothing that I can think of at this moment in time, uncle."
Oh, okay. Well, my companion and I were just wondering if you would appreciate some company, because obviously this is going to be a stressful time for you. So we just thought we'd offer to accompany on your trip and give you any support that you need.
Well, yes, it is rather worrying, I must say, and your support would be very welcome. I mean, it seems very strange that I'm actually going to be encountering, or attending, should I say, sort of like 2 funerals in say 1 week. Very strange.
2 funerals? If you don't mind me asking, who was the other one for?
Mr. Reynolds?
Sorry, I can't remember you mentioning him before. You might have done. The name seems to have slipped.
No, he was one of my army companions, and yes, a very, very sad case happened only just yesterday. Mr. Webber, you when he mentions this person's name, Orlando Reynolds, you almost like put 2 and 2 together, and from the newspaper that you were reading in the Carlton and actually have with you now, it suddenly dawns on you that you've seen that name before, and it's sort of like you think, where have I seen that before? And then you suddenly realise it's probably in the paper, and so you have a quick look through it when Dr. King is talking to his nephew, and you actually do find the story, which is here, which I'll read out as well. So it says, "Tragedy at Charing Cross. Man falls in front of train. Bystanders at Charing Cross Station were horrified yesterday afternoon when a man fell from the platform and was fatally struck by an incoming train. Orlando Reynolds, 42, was pronounced dead at the scene shortly after the accident. A veteran of the Sudan campaign, now working as a shop assistant, Reynolds is survived by his wife Rosemary and their 2 children. Their funeral will be held later this week at St John's, Kennington. Pending an inquest, the incident is believed to have been simple misadventure, but afternoon train services were seriously disrupted as the platform had to be closed. The Railway Board officials are investigating this strategy to determine how similar incidences may be avoided in the future. Now, I'm going to... you should have that now. Yeah.
Yeah. That's upsetting. Is misadventure the equivalent of an accident?
Yeah, so misadventure basically means that it wasn't suspicious. So he either tripped and fell over, or he decided to commit suicide and throw himself in the front of it. But it generally means misadventure. Generally means that it wasn't suspicious. They don't think anybody chucked him underneath there or dragged him off the platform or anything like that. It's a word that sort of like covers it all. So
excellent. I'll after leafing through the newspaper and finding that, I'll nudge Dr. King and show him that so that he sees that. And I say to Alan, heard of him. It was very unfortunate.
Oh yes, quite dreadful. I mean, I must say, I never thought he was like that. You know, it's quite confusing actually. I always sort of like thought of him as a very how can one say it, well-orientated man, very sane all the time, very dedicated to his wife and his children. I think they must be taking it quite sadly.
It's a death an early death is always a tragedy and hits everyone hard.
Yes, and now of course, shortly after that we have this second death. Good old Sergeant Major John. Yeah, I'm not too sure what's going on here, but I mean, maybe the funeral can tell us something. Maybe some of his close friends might be at the funeral that we can sort of like investigate what the strange occurrence of this.
Yes, it's sounds like unfortunate, but it's a good opportunity nonetheless.
The train is ready to go, so you are ushered on and you pay for your tickets. You are, of course, travelling first class. So you have one of those little cubicles for yourselves with the sliding door. So in there will be Peabody and Webber and Allen and you, Dr. King. So you sort of like sat round and preparing yourself for what will be quite a long journey down to Dover. So this is an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you wish, and if you don't need to know anything, then I will jump the adventure on to arriving at Dover. So it's over to you, Roddy.
I have one question.
Yeah. Who are you asking? Is this asking me out of character or asking Alan?
Aaron Weber asking Alan.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And I wanted to preface it because I didn't want to just go right out with my question. My question is how did Herbert Crouch die? But I want to make sure that it's kind of in a casual sense. I don't want to just be blunt. And once we've sat down, asked that, I want to kind of continue on that was very strange occurrences, with...
Yeah, Alan sort of like, it would appear that Alan is not aware of how he died. He uses that wonderful phrase again, via misadventure. And that's what he actually states. He says, I think it was some kind of misadventure. He says, I must admit, the invitation I got did not provide much detail about his death. Maybe we'll be able to find out more when we get there. Sure to be some companions. I know he was a single man. Maybe some companions or people who live nearby, like some neighbours perhaps, might be attending the funeral, which would be brilliant.
What about some of your fellow, your fellow companions from the regiment? Would they also have been invited? If you have.
Well, I certainly hope so. It might be a bit of a reunion. I'm not too sure who was invited because the telegram just came directly to myself. But hopefully we'll be able to meet some of my fellow companions from what appears to be the last surviving members of our group. Excuse me.
Alan, you excited to see all the surviving members?
Say again, sorry, Mr. Weber.
Are you excited to see all of the surviving members of?
Yeah, well, I mean, some were officers, and you know what officers can be like in the army. Very many of them are quite boisterous and belligerent, very well, you know, it's not like the middle class person like me to be made an officer. I mean, Major John Goa was definitely an officer, I think we can say quite correctly.
It's understandable. That's about all the questions I have as Weber for this strip.
Okay. Dr. King, do you have any?
King doesn't have any questions that he can think of.
Okay. So the travelling to Charing to Dover through the train takes some time, and you're almost like quite horrified when you get there, because apparently there is also a journey on a cab to take you right the way out of the station, out to what appears to be I think the best way to describe it is a stone cottage on the hillside with nothing around it. So I gave you the wrong name, by the way, so don't get confused. You are going to see Herbert Crouch's funeral. That's the person that you're going to see. Yeah, and he sort of like says, you sort of like get out there and you notice that there's sort of like a few of these stone farmhouses dotted around, and then what appears to be a church almost like stuck on it. It's a quite small community, and it doesn't look like it's very interactive. It looks like it's quite deserted, and only a few of friends and family are actually at the funeral. You walk past Major Crouch's house. It looks nice. It doesn't look run down or anything. But the thing that you do notice quite specifically is that the garden is full of roses. There seems to be roses of every colour almost in that garden. And as you walk past, Alan sort of like looks in and says, he was always very fond of his roses. I wonder if he managed to finish his memoirs. That would be an interesting thing to see and maybe read.
Yes, I'm sure the memoirs of a the soldier would be rather interesting, especially to someone like myself who didn't have the opportunity to serve.
Yeah, and so you make your way to the church, and there's somebody there that Alan seems to know, and he sort of like, he doesn't wave or anything. He just sort of like nods at the person, and this person is quite small for a human man, and he's very thin and rat-like. I think is the best way to describe him. He has very sharp features on his face, and almost like gaunt looking. And Alan sort of like points him out and sort of like points over to him. And he says, "That's Toby Norton. I'm rather surprised that he's managed to get here."
I'm surprised. How so?
Well, to put it in the nicest way possible, he's not very well off. How can one say it? He's definitely not from our social standing at all.
I see. I assume then he must have had some particular connection to Mr. Crouch.
Oh, he's part of the regiment, yes.
But I mean, if it must have been a particularly special connection for if he's particularly not well off for him to have made the journey.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. Maybe he set off quite a while ago. I'm not too sure, but he was a nice enough man in the regiment. A bit rough for my liking, if that makes any sense to anybody. So the funeral is very short and very it's almost like very religious, and there's a lots of Hail Marys and crossing, gesticulation and bowing and things like that. And you notice that there is one of Crouch's sisters is at the funeral. You only know this because he the vicar, the priest, says, "I will now allow Miss Rose to say a few words about her brother," and she sort of like comes up and says a few words, and then chucks a rose that you think it was probably picked from Crouch's garden this morning, and then a handful of soil onto the thing, and she's quite upset and crying, and eventually it gets to that awkward stage at the end of the funeral that everybody is stood there, and it's sort of like everybody sort of like laying their tributes, and Toby Norton brings quite a sizable wreath of flowers. It's quite big and quite impressive, and he sort of like brings it up and puts it down, and Alan turns to you and says, "Oh gosh, I forgot about bringing any gifts. Do you bring gifts to a funeral?"
He's dead. I'm sure he won't mind.
Yes, well, it's nice that some of us from the company actually made it today. So at least that's one good thing. Okay, yeah. So the people have started to sort of like the service is finished now. So now's your opportunity to engage with anybody that you would like to engage with.
I have a question. And this might be bad timing. Would I have been able during the funeral to roll psychology to see if there's anybody whose grief doesn't really seem real, faked grief?
Yeah, you roll it, yeah, by all means.
Oh yeah. And pow.
Yeah, you get a success. So it seems that everybody is very genuine. Some of them are of the vicar, the priest is probably the one who's at least interested in for him it's almost like a job, it's a profession, and he's just sort of like go through it. However, everybody else seems to be grief stricken. You think Toby and Alan are, it's always like stiff upper lip time, being in the army, not saying anything, not letting their emotions show, and they're stood there quite stoically and sort of like taking their hats off at the appropriate moment in time, and then just sort of like keeping their heads down at the appropriate moment in time. That's about it. Yeah. Dr. King, is there anything you would like to do?
Dr. King, to like knowing it's the right and proper thing to do, will at the end of the service approach the family, just offer his condolences to start off with.
So roll for me, please, a luck roll.
Oh, a luck roll. Okay. It's the green one. There we go.
Yeah, you notice that other people are sort of like coming up to the family, and the majority of them are getting very almost like semi-polite thank you, goodbye. They're not sort of like hanging around the sister. It's a lot more sort of like hello, I'm very sorry for your loss, and the sisters are saying thank you. And then you can see the person stood there and thinking, right, I'm off. And they don't say anything. They just sort of like walk off. And she stood at the graveside, so you're quite welcome to go up and have a talk with her.
Okay.
Would I be able to follow Dr. King here?
Yeah, it's completely up to you. You can if you wish.
I mean, he's the person I know here, so...
Yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, Dr. King will approach.
You notice, just as you walk away, you notice that Toby Norton, Mr. Norton, has come over and is engaging in conversation with Alan Pace at the moment, Mr. Pace at the moment. Yeah. So Dr. King, you head over to the grieving sister with Mr. Webber in tow.
Okay. So he'll offer his hand and say, my condolences in this stressful time.
Yeah, she's not. She seems to be reacting to you the same as she's reacting to everyone else. So she almost like keeps her hands grasped in front of her. She's wearing quite nice black gloves to sort of like match her whole black outfit. And the only thing that she hasn't got is a veil, a black veil. She hasn't gone that far. But you do notice her clothing is not very rich. It's probably a worker's salary or what she's doing, and you sort of like say sorry for your loss, and she does exactly what she did with the other attendees to the funeral. She just says thank you.
Okay. So then he'll Dr. King will move on, and then sort of he'll look to see where Alan and Toby and any of the other people that Alan's identified as from the company.
Yeah, well,
see if they're still hanging around.
As mentioned, Alan and Toby are having a chat back where you were sat. Stood. There's also obviously some the grave diggers are there. They're just sort of like leaning on their shovels, waiting for people to go. They've probably got lunch pretty soon, and they just sort of like stood there so they can start filling back in. And the vicar's there as well, and he's saying hello to people and sort of like saying, God be with you, God bless you.
Dr. King will turn to Webb and say, is there anyone else you want to speak to before we head back to introduce ourselves to Toby? Or Mr. Norton, should I say?
Yeah. I guess after... Well, no, I didn't say it. Never mind. Discount whatever I said. Aaron will look around and say, "We should probably figure out the cause." A really low tone, because I assume we're still a few feet away.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
And after I say the cause to Dr. King, I'll look at the lady and say, "My condolences. Death seems to be pretty active lately."
Sorry, who are you saying that to? Sorry.
The grieving woman with.
All right. Yeah. So you left that, didn't you, Dr. King? You said that, and.
Dr. King was taking a few steps away to let the next person step up, whether that's Aaron or.
Okay, then. So Mr. Webber, you'll be next in line to ask, what's going on. Mr. King, what would you like to do?
Mr. King he'll keep an eye on Toby and Alan, but he wants to approach the vicar to start off with.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's do Mr. Webber first.
I guess now that I've gotten in line, I approach her and I say, "My condolences. And that seems to be pretty active lately."
Can you roll for me a luck roll?
Yeah.
She sort of like looks at you and just says, "Thank you."
Yeah, I'm not gonna push that. I'm gonna move on. I don't want to hurt somebody on their grieving.
Yeah.
Not the funeral.
And I guess I'm not from around here, so it's probably going to be difficult. But I'm gonna try and approach some people who.
Well, the other group. So literally, there's now 3 groups of people. There's Toby and Alan chatting. There's the people lining up to give their condolences to Crouch's sister, and then there's the vicar who's sort of like making conversation with people over to one side.
Okay, that does help. Okay, I'm gonna be slowly making my way over to Toby and Alan, kind of hoping that the doctor will finish up his conversations and follow me by the time I get there.
Okay,
kind of converging.
Yeah, so you sort of like start heading towards it. So we'll go straight back to Dr. King then. What is it that you are up to at the moment?
So Dr. King's he wants to try and catch a few words with the vicar when he's not busy talking to other people.
All right. Sorry, I thought you were going back to Alan and Toby.
No, he wanted to have a quick chat with the vicar first, and then he was going to head back.
So, Mr. Webber, you'll need to wait a little bit longer.
That's why I'm walking particularly slow, so that once he's done.
You'll actually get to Toby and Alan before Dr. King gets there. So Dr. King, you're off to see the vicar.
Mm-hmm. So when he approaches the vicar, he'll introduce himself and say, "Thank you for the service, Reverend. My name's Dr. King. I'm here with my nephew who knew." And he sort of like smiles at you and says, "Well, thank you very much for making the trip out here. I'm sure Herbert would be very, very grateful for your attendance here today." Yes, thank you. It was a lovely service. Thank you for that. I just have a couple of. I only know a little bit about Herbert from my nephew Alan. I was just wondering if you could give a few more words about him. Your sermon particularly touched me.
Yes. Sorry. You're asking for what?
Has he been one of your parishioners long?
Yes, all the time. He's lived here.
Was that a decent length of time? Because I understand he was in the army. So did he retire straight from here, or did he come from the village?
He sort of like says, "Sorry, what is your relationship with Herbert Crouch?"
As I said, he was a good. My nephew and Herbert served together, and in Africa and the Sudan. And I was just wanting to, as I said, the service particularly sort of like moved me. I was just wanting to know a little bit more about the family. That's all.
Yes, I think maybe talk to your nephew. I'm not too sure. Are you a reporter?
No, as I said, I'm a doctor.
Right. Well, sadly, your skills will no longer be needed on Herbert. I'm afraid he has gone to a better place.
I quite understand. That's okay.
We spend our lives hoping to get into heaven, and yet we spend our lives hoping not to die. Quite ironic, isn't it?
Yes.
The two are almost like diametrically opposed to each other, only by, and he brings his Bible up to his chest, only by following the good Lord's words and living an honest and well-to-do life can one expect to pass through those pearly gates without any misdemeanors weighing you down and bringing. Tell me, Miss, what was your name again? Sorry,
Dr. King.
Tell me, Dr. King, are you a religious man?
I've been known. Yes. I must admit I don't attend my local church as often as I should.
When did you first hear God's call?
Well, I've always attended church. I just recently I've been somewhat preoccupied with my profession.
Well, did you find God calling to you when you were but a young lad?
I wouldn't say he's ever called to me, but I'm aware of where he is.
Well, believe me, Mr. King,
the
Lord works in mysterious ways. I am sure the Holy Spirit will find you and immerse itself around you, so you can feel the complete glory and honour of being accepted into God's family.
Yes, thank you. I'll leave you to your parishioners.
And yes, Dr. King, and just remember, I know you are probably a medical man, but remember, medicine cannot cease, stop, or prevent your final meeting with the Lord the God on Judgment Day. Maybe start to attend your church again.
I'll bear those words in mind. Thank you, Reverend. And you'll wander back to the others.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Webber, and you are over, and you approach Alan and Toby, and they seem to be having a chat as you sort of like approach them. And can you just make for me a listen roll?
I was worried you're going to say luck.
No.
Well, that didn't help me much.
No. Okay, so you carry on, and they seem to be talking about something. But as you get close, they seem to stop, and they sort of like Alan sort of like turns to you and says, "Oh, Mr. Webber, may I introduce to you Mr. Norton here?"
Greetings, Mr. Norton.
And he sort of like Mr. Norton, Toby Norton, sort of like turns round to you and says, "Hello. I don't think we've ever met, have we?"
I don't believe so.
I sense from your accent that you're probably not from our valued land here in England.
No, I married into this land.
Right. I suppose one should be rather grateful for that.
I suppose. Couldn't help but notice that beautiful wreath of flowers you brought.
Yes, Alan says, "Yes, Mr. Webber, I was just talking about the same thing. And I was just commenting, where it came from." And Toby sort of like goes, "Well, sadly, not from my pocket, that's for sure. No, I'm afraid it was only here through the kindness of the Major. He paid for the wreath and also my train journey out here. Quite nice of him. There's some officers that you can really trust and engage with, while there are others who will not be that, well, shall we just say, since we are among friends, will not lower themselves to this sort of occasion. Alan says, "Oh yes, sorry, Mr. Webber. He's a bit confused or disappointed. Sorry." And Toby Norton turns around and says, "I'm not disappointed, Alan. I'm very annoyed, very annoyed." And Alan turns back to you, Mr. Webber, and says, "Yes, we're rather disappointed that Colonel Hollingsworth hasn't actually attended the funeral. You know, being the commanding officer, etc. Rather disappointing." Toby says, "Disappointing, saying the least. Obviously, I mean, I know he's been very busy these last few days or weeks, but I mean, come off it. You know, one of the buffs, and he doesn't even show his face."
What's he been so busy with that would prevent him from going to a funeral?
Yeah, and Toby often sort of like listens to you and sort of like turns around to you and almost like thinks, a kindred spirit, you know, who's not one of these hoity-toity sort of like classes, and says, "Yeah, my point exactly. Probably nothing. Probably just sitting in his mansion, enjoying the wealth of wars, I probably would say it." Alan said, "Oh, please, Miss Toby, please do not be bitter about it. It's, you know, things happen. Companies fall apart. You know, we can't all possibly stay in touch with everybody, and I'm sure the Colonel has so much more important things to be doing, more engagements perhaps, or, you know, socialising or something like that. I'm sure there's a very viable excuse why he's not here." And Toby says, "Yeah, just probably couldn't give a damn about the poor Major Gower. Major Crouch, sorry."
Is there anybody who didn't like Crouch? He seems like a very well-liked individual.
And Alan sort of like picks up the story and sort of like says, "Oh yes, he was very pleasant. Well, a bit grumpy at times, a bit how can one say it, brash. But hey, you know, he was a sergeant major. What do you expect from sergeant majors? It's all that shouting and bellowing and do this and pick up those feet, etc., etc. But, you know, I'm still disappointed that he's left, you know, but he retired here from the army, bought this cottage actually, and he sort of like points down to the cottage, to write his memoirs in and to grow roses. I wish I brought him roses. That would have been a nice thought, wouldn't it?"
It would have been. I agree.
Yes. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, Mr. Webber, is it not?
Yeah.
Yes, very interesting. And very, very, well, very, a very hideous way of going, I must say.
How do you mean? Was it not a pleasant death?
Well, I wouldn't say that. Apparently, from the rumours, Mr. Norton here was telling me, apparently he was strangled.
That doesn't seem like an accidental death or misadventure to me.
No, I'm quite surprised that the local constabulary are not taking more of an interest in this rather suspicious death. And Toby Norton brings out a newspaper. It's been folded several times, and folded over and over again, and almost like lengthways, almost rolled but not quite rolled. And he opens it out, and he sort of like hands it to you, Mr. Webber. Not on the front page, it's on a story halfway through it, and you find this. Brutal murder of a popular local war hero. Retired Sergeant Major strangled in his home. A most beautiful, brutal and shocking murder has been perpetrated in the quiet Dover suburb without apparent motive. Sergeant Major Herbert Crouch, 51, was discovered in his home yesterday morning, strangled by an unknown assailant. A neighbour reported seeing a tall figure near the garden gate of Crouch's residence on the night of the murder, and the police urgently desire to speak with anyone who can cast light on the identity of this person. Sergeant Major Crouch served with the Buffs in Afghanistan, Egypt and the Sudan before his retirement. When he returned to Dover area to be near his relatives, he was well known locally for his expert coaching of the local rugby team and his prize-winning Roses. And he will be greatly missed. You should have that now in your handouts. Yeah.
Yes.
Just ignore the date on it. Don't worry about the date.
I presumed as much. Is he gesturing to get this newspaper back?
No, he's virtually given it to you. It looks like it's been in his pocket or something like that for some time, or maybe tucked inside his jacket. You know, it's been there for quite a while.
Unless he makes a move or asks for it back, I'm going to keep holding it, and eventually I'll put it in my pocket after it's been a while.
Yeah, cool.
That's very upsetting. Very, very upsetting. A rugby, though, you'd say. He must have been a tough individual.
Oh, yes. I'm surprised that anybody managed to strangle him. Although, you know, we soon lose that muscle tone, don't we, once we've exited the general rigours of army life. I found that once I finished, you know, my wound in my shoulder, you know, never really healed. Hey, even now on the cold nights, I sometimes feel the pang of that piece of shrapnel that almost like cut into it. Very strange. Mr. Webber, do you suspect foul play here?
I would be a fool not to.
Oh, very, very interesting. Mr. Norton looks almost like suspicious at you, and he says, sorry, he says, who are you again?
My name's Aaron Webber. I'm an inquiry agent.
Oh. Well,
I came with Alan and his uncle, Dr. King.
I see. Yeah. I wish. Yeah, okay, I agree with you, Mr. Webber. This thing really needs to be sorted.
Dobie, are you from this town here in Dover?
No, I live in London.
Gotcha. So you probably wouldn't know many people here, would you?
Oh, no. No. To be honest with you, I don't think I do want to know any people here.
Why do you say that?
Well, people are people anywhere, aren't they? They always take advantage. The rich people gain their wealth and then just leave us, you know, to live our lives caring for them. Oh, you know, things are never as good as what they seem. Never.
Indeed. Things are a little purer out here in nature, I think.
Alan turns around to you and says, Mr. Webber, you mentioned that you were a private investigator, yes?
Indeed. Well, yeah, I was. I suppose I still am.
Well, I was wondering whether or not you think the local constabulary might be able to provide for us any further information about their Sergeant Major's unfortunate demise.
It's a very good call. I heard they weren't too helpful, but they might help us.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe you, since you are to mention one of the vicar's words in his sermon to us, one of their flock, you might be able to, work your magic, talk about law things, and maybe get some more information.
Absolutely. That's an absolutely great idea.
Okay, so you can, Mr. Webber, you can head off to the local police station, and which is, when I say police station, it's in a house. It's, the downstairs is the station and the upstairs is where the officers live, but it does have one of those lanterns outside that are blue with the words police on it, and it's there for you to see. So you can head down there and we'll do some rolls in a second. Dr. King, what would you like to do?
So once he's had his conversation with the vicar, he'll have made his way back over to his nephew and Webber. If he's in time for the end of that conversation, then great. If not, then if he just sees Webber sort of walking off towards the police station, he'll have a quick chat with his nephew, and then going to try and catch up with Webber.
I was hoping to wait for Dr. King.
Okay then. So yeah, you can wait for each other, and you can then make your way to the police station, and Alan and Toby sort of like mention that they'll meet you at the station, ready for the homeward journey.
Well, while we're walking, I'd like to share everything that I learned there. If it's just Dr. King and I share everything I learned,
Yeah, that's absolutely
including
true. Yeah.
murder, all that information. You are caught up.
That sounds like your conversation was more fruitful than mine. I tried to get a little bit of information about the recently departed from the vicar, and other than that he sort of retired here, that was it. I thought, being the vicar of a small village, he would know most people or be aware of most things that are going on, but
He might not have been close to them.
might not have been, or he might have been reluctant to share that information with me.
Okay, so you make your way down to the police house, for want of a better word. Can you make for me, please, either a law roll, or if you don't have that, a fast talk or persuade roll?
Is that both or one of us?
Well, it'll be Mr. Are you trained in law?
No.
No. So, Mr. Webber, are you trained in law?
Yeah, I was just noticing my law and my fast talk are identical skill level.
Cool.
So I want to roll law.
Yeah.
Pow. Could I spend three luck?
Yeah. By all means. Okay, so you spend those 3 luck, so cross them off, and then basically you have a chat with the local constable, who seems very happy to converse with you, since you are an inquiry agent. You're almost like with him on the job, and you make a comment that Dr. King is working alongside you for any forensic evidence that you find. Anyway, it's really interesting talking to the constable, because he makes you a cup of tea, all of you. You sort of like sit down on those heavy drinking on odd chairs. They don't match or anything, and the mugs that he's giving you to drink your tea out are heavily stained inside, but he claims that it just adds to the flavour, and he sort of like gives you some rather warm milk in it and a few sugars. And as you sort of like sit there and start to chat, various pieces of information come out. He mentions about the it was a neighbour who reported a very tall figure near the back gate of the cottage the night of the murder. He says it was really interesting. Unfortunately, she couldn't make out any features of this person, and the police have no leads as to why the sergeant major would be killed at all. The interesting thing is that they do find that he was strangled. That was the clinical forensic diagnosis. However, the constable gives you some more information which you find rather interesting. The first thing was that his windpipe was actually crushed, okay, which can happen in strangulation but is very rare. It takes quite a considerable force to do that. Also, the bones of his neck, of his spine, etc., were actually ground together with considerable force. So you figure it was more a grab and twist job rather than just a grab job. And the only other thing that comes out, the autopsy, was that there were finger-shaped bruises on the victim's throat.
I was just about to ask, was there sort of a Dr. King would ask, was there sort of a were there bruises on the throat, basically, is what he was going to ask. Was there one sort of like on the bottom of the jaw? Do you know?
No, he just says that there were finger-shaped bruises on the victim's throat.
Okay.
Which would generally mean that it was it wasn't done with a different implement. It was done by the hands.
Is this all the information that he seems to have?
Yeah, if you want to suggest to me any other pieces of information you would like to see whether or not he knows, then I can do that. So if you want to give me general topics, I can let you know whether or not he knows anything about it.
Yeah.
Do they know? Would they be able to tell? Well, would they know how long he'd been dead by the time they found him? Roughly,
yeah, well, that
days,
yeah, so
hours, days, that sort of thing.
No, well, you can piece that together because in the newspaper report it said that on the night of the murder, and then he was found the next morning.
It was stated that the neighbor saw a very tall figure. My first question is, roughly how tall is very tall?
Well, he sort of like says taller than the average man.
Taller than the cottages out there?
Not a giant, he says. Taller than the average man, he says. But he sort of like looks at you and says, well, she is old though. So...
what is this neighbor's name? Do you I'm sorry. do you know where we might be able to find her?
Yeah, they've got an address. He's not that happy giving you out confidential information, so you'll need to roll your fast talk to get it.
And my reason when rolling fast talk is that I just want to check up, see any information she has, and make sure she is safe as well.
Yeah,
and that's
cool.
that's an excuse. Let's see if it.
Yeah, by 2 points. Yeah. He sort of like, he doesn't give you the address of the person. He sort of like says that it's the next door neighbour to the cottage, which means it's the next cottage along. And you remember actually passing one on the way up to Crouches, so you know which one it is.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it helps to clarify which neighbor.
Yeah.
Let's see. How, and I might need to roll psychology for this. How upset is this constabulary?
Oh yeah, I can give you that. That's not an issue. They seem very professional. They seem to want to pride themselves in doing a good job. So they don't look like they're getting themselves emotionally attached with the death, which is probably how it should be. You don't think it's anything unusual that, they didn't know him, so it's probably absolutely fine. It's what, it's what Mr. Webber expects in any case. It's a bit like, when the person you're trying to find gets electrocuted, you don't cry over it. You just move on.
Not until you get home, at least.
Yeah.
Another question. Was there anybody that didn't like Herbert?
No, he sort of like, the constable says that he was a well-liked member of the community. He kept himself to himself. He won prizes with his roses that he used to enter into the fates, the fairs every year. He used to go to church. He was polite. He would doff his cap, when ladies were around. He was very proper. He didn't have visitors. There's nobody sort of like came round to visit him or anything like that. He kept himself to himself. But at the same time, he seemed to be a very pleasant man.
Are there a lot of people who do rose growing for competitions around here?
No, not really. Roses are not the thing that is done. It's mostly some kind of vegetables, the funny shaped banana, funny shaped carrot or something like that, But he actually won prizes. So
Anybody tall enough to fit the neighbor's description in this town?
Well, all they know is that he was very tall.
Do you have any very tall people here?
Well, the constable says, you've walked through the village. You haven't seen any 12-foot high people or anything like that walking around. But the interesting thing is, you're not too sure. The report doesn't really classify what very tall is. It just says it was a very tall person. It was dark. They couldn't see any of the features or anything like that.
I guess out of game, I want to ask this first. If I know, what is the moon phase in?
It was a crescent moon that was waning. There was no sort of, it wasn't a full moon or anything like that recently. It's coming through the latter quarter of the lunar cycle.
Thanks for indulging my paranoia.
It was my pleasure.
No full moon. You have any questions?
No, you seem to have covered all of all of the ones that I had.
Oh, somebody's at the door.
But I'm busy.
We can go and answer you can answer the door, Mr. Pickles.
It's probably just gonna be somebody who wants to tell me about a church.
Okay, why don't we take because it's nearly past. Let's take
Sounds good.
the break now, and then we can be back in. Hang on, I've got my timer here. We can be back in 10 minutes. So please don't go away. So we are live again. We are back. Welcome back. The investigators, were just considering their next step, where they would go next on the deal and the adventure, and they were talking about trying to get some of Herbert Crouch's memoirs, and I was just saying to them that probably the only way that you could actually get into the cottage would be via illegal means. Not even the police, because technically that wasn't the crime scene. The crime scene wasn't inside the cottage, it was out in the garden. So really and truly the only person who would have access to the house would be his sister, who you've already met, and got quite
stiff response.
Yes, yeah. Although it is quite possible to talk to the neighbour if you wish.
Yeah, we may have to add a visit in to talk to the sister at some point. Are Dr. King and I turned out of the constabulary, or are we still in there?
It's up to you. You can either still be in there or you could have left. It depends whether or not you want to ask any more questions with your law role.
Dr. King would have had one other question. It's more of an assumption that he wants to clear up. So we'd ask the constable if Mr. Crouch, it is Mr. Crouch, isn't it? If Mr. Crouch was, I believe you mentioned that it was mentioned that he was to do with the local rugby club. So I'm assuming he was, apart from being strangled, in still fairly good health, and
he was
still fairly physically.
Yeah, he was
active.
Yeah.
Okay. So that because that's interesting. That makes it. And was he somewhat of a, not having met the man himself? Was he? I'm assuming as a former sergeant major in a regiment, he would have been a somewhat physically imposing gentleman.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you've got information that you've had. I mean, the constable virtually says, well, it depends. It depends on the person, I mean, he was. It's like what he said before. He was a nice guy. He was quite gruff at times, but he supported the village, etc. He supported the rugby club.
I was more after sort of. Not necessarily his manner, but more his physical. Was he?
Well, he managed. So he managed.
He's a rugby player, but was
he
a big man? Was he sort of a fairly big chap? Was he still fairly muscular? Had he sort of deteriorated? Did he have a bit of a belly? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, because those are a bit. So how muscular? How? I mean, he that he played rugby. He coached the rugby team, and he wasn't. He wasn't an invalid or anything like that. He just seemed to be like a normal, everyday guy. So do you wish to go and have a chat with the neighbour?
Yeah, unless Dr. King has any more questions, I'm ready.
Dr. King is he's done.
On the way to the neighbor's house, if I may, I would like to note to Dr. King, maybe if we pay a visit to his sister, when she's not at the funeral, we might be able to hear more of those answers to your questions about Herbert.
Maybe, yes.
So what was your premise for going to the to talk to the neighbour?
I think I'm going to go with honesty this round, as we're looking into the what happened to Herbert, and we just want to see if we can close this case so that it doesn't happen to anybody else. Concern is the primary emotion we're going to be, or at least I'm going to be trying to portray to her with the question of just clarifying how tall is very tall. Is she like a little old lady who would see myself as probably very tall? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, her name is actually Gladys Jones, and she is, you would be very tall for her. And you sort of like knock at the door, and she's very sort of like dubious. She doesn't ask you in or anything like that because she's aware that her next door neighbour got strangled, and she doesn't know you guys or anything like that. And she sort of like says, in her little sort of like old lady voice, she sort of like goes, "Can I help you?"
Yeah, we just came from the constabulary. We heard of the death of Herbert Crouch, and I work as an inquiry agent. I just want to solve this case, make sure that whoever is responsible is put away. And I just came to confirm some details.
She says,
Gladys?
She says, are the police not investigating this? I'm sure Roy mentioned to me just the other week in church. The other day in church that he was investigating this further.
Yes, indeed. Sometimes investigating further means you have people come in, confirm details. We're just trying to make sure. Absolutely. Speedy, fast talk.
Yeah, she says, well, I suppose that... I mean, I've told everything to Roy.
All I want to know, ma'am, is how tall was this individual? Where were you when you saw the tall figure in the garden?
I was closing my curtains in the front room. I think I must have fallen to sleep because I remember being awake when it was light, and then I opened my eyes and it was dark. So, well, apart from the embers and the firelight from my my small but cozy fireplace, so I got up to close the curtains, and there he was, stood at the bottom of the garden on the road. A very tall man, very tall.
Tall like me, or taller?
How tall is Mr. Webber?
My size is 65, so I would presume that I'm probably like 6'2", maybe.
And she sort of like looks you up and down, and says, "Can you just go and stand by the wall?"
Absolutely. I'll make my way down there, or over there, and stand by the wall.
And she sort of like looks you up and down again and says, "Come back now, come back."
I'll trudge my way back.
And she says, "No, I think he was slightly taller than you."
Excellent, that's good to know. Slightly taller.
But I must say, you look a lot clearer with my glasses on.
Did you not have your glasses on when you saw the figure?
No, they had. I think I must have gone for a nap. I'm not too sure. I had them on when I went to sleep. Well, did I fall to sleep, I wonder, or did I not?
Your cottage must be pretty cozy. You take lots of naps?
Oh yes. My late husband once said to me, "Take a good nap every day, and the time will go by a lot quicker." Pretty soon, I think they might be actually arranging a funeral for myself. You know, my 70 years and 10 are slightly overdone now. The Lord probably awaits for me.
Oh, Gladys, let's hope you don't meet death too soon.
Oh, I hope not. I hope not. But if not, I will be entering into the realm of heaven, where God's great arms will pick me up and give me a right good squeeze, I think.
Well, God bless you, Gladys. I nudge Dr. King. Got any more questions?
No, nothing that I can think of. It's been quite useful there. Thank you very much. Unless you have any further ones, Mr. Webber.
I don't think so. I
Okay.
appreciate your time. Good day, Gladys.
Oh, yes. Goodbye to you both. Thank you very much for coming round and for tea and cookies. I really did enjoy it. Thank you so much. Please come again. And she sort of like closes the door behind you. You do notice that Alan and Toby are walking up and sort of like sees you, and Alan sort of like calls you, and you sort of like meet at the bottom of the gate, and he sort of like he takes out Alan takes out his pocket watch, and he sort of like clicks it open and says, I think it's about we really need to get the train back to London. I think it's oh yes, we only have a limited number of time, and Toby is going to come back with us. I hope that is agreeable to you both.
Oh yes, of course. It'll make the trip slightly more merrier.
How much time do we have?
Oh, he says about half an hour, Mr. Webber. Before the train leaves, we have to get to the station as well.
We'll meet you there.
Yeah. He says, okay then. He says, don't be late.
Yeah, we won't be late. Don't worry. I wait for them to leave.
Yeah.
And then turn to Dr. King. I think there's only one place left with the limited time we have. We're gonna have to.
We can try it, but they might be a little bit busy with the wake.
The wake? No, I'm suggesting we go find evidence within.
Oh, you mean you
Ben
want
Crouch's
to have
house?
lead on?
And I guess we'll make our way over to the house because I was just at the garden, so I presume I know where the house is.
It's just next door, yeah.
All right. Do the quick investigation once we get there of is the front door unlocked, any windows unlocked, any entry possible?
Okay, so you're going to have to go around the whole house and check doors and windows. Then, what are you doing, Mr. Dr. King?
Dr. King will probably he doesn't really want to be involved in actually breaking in. He probably have a look at the garden, sort of like have a sort of like go and have a look to see where he would have to stand in the garden to have been seen by the next door neighbour's front window.
Yeah, well, you know that. I mean, just over the wall. It was just over the wall. It wasn't actually in the garden. It was over the wall. So,
but sort of, and then from that he'll work sort of like backwards. So, at what point in the garden would he have to stand so that he can no longer be seen from that front window and those sorts of things? He wants to try and sort of like more get to like sight lines and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you figured that. I mean, you could see the whole of the front garden from Gladys's cottage.
Okay.
You can see both hers and Crouch's. So, Mr. Webber, you spend 10 minutes going around checking all the doors and windows. You'll have to guess at some of them. There's actually like a roof, like a sun window, but not completely. Just looks like some kind of maybe something to do with the roof. May be damaged or something like that. But after 10 minutes, you go around and everything seems to be quite locked up.
10 minutes. Quick question. How if we both ran, and presuming that the doctor is not in terrible shape, if we both ran, how long would it take us to get to the station?
Well, remember you came out here on hansom cab. if you remember, you actually got a cab out here, and it was quite a long journey up the side of the hill, through Dover and up the side of the hill. So I think if you wanted to run, apart from it being almost like marathon in distance, maybe, it would take you a lot longer. It'd be a lot quicker via cab, like the carriage that you came up here in.
How long would that take? About
The carriage ride?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was about 25 minutes, half an hour.
So basically.
Well, let's see. So if we've probably already missed the train station, how often do trains run through? Would we be able to easily get another ticket out if we stayed here longer?
Yeah, you can get the train tomorrow morning. That's absolutely fine.
Is there a place to stay in town, like an inn or a tavern?
Well, there's the local hotel, which is just like a few rooms above the club, the pub, where alcohol is served.
Okay, excellent. I'll go out to the garden and find Dr. King, having noticed that everything's locked up. And once I do, I want to say to him, I think we're going to have to stay here a little longer.
But how much longer is a little longer? We haven't got long before the train, Mr. Weber.
I mean, we're not taking that train.
Right, okay. We'll have to find lodgings, and I'll have to send a couple of telegrams, but and to rearrange some of my appointments tomorrow morning. But I'm sure I can do something.
Good to know you're flexible. We'll have to find some lodging and perhaps come back here at night. That might be the easiest time to find evidence.
Evidence at night? Surely that makes it harder to find because you can't... Oh, I think I see what you mean. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to get in, and I don't particularly want the police kicking us out of town before we solve the crime.
Right, okay.
So is the plan to take up lodgings at the local tavern and then come back to the house during the night?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking on what the doctor just said, because I mean, if we go there and break in, it might be easier to break in without getting noticed. But then if we have a gaslight lantern, in there looking around for evidence, anybody who sees a light in that house is going to say, "Huh, that's weird."
Yeah, and I mean, you don't have a gaslight lantern with you at the moment.
Making assumptions.
We'd have to hope there'd be one in there, Mr. Weber.
And then even then, actually getting up in the you would have to travel up there in the dark.
Yeah.
You might scare Gladys.
I don't want to scare Gladys. Of all things, I don't need another soul on my list of
I'm a doctor. I can't be responsible for frightening someone to death.
Well, let's continue investigating here. Have you found anything in the garden? Any footprints of note, or?
Not that I'd be able to tell. I did try and have a look at the sightlines, and it's a fairly open garden, and it's like the sightlines, especially to Gladys's. She can see the whole of this garden from her front window, and those sorts of things. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to need you to keep a lookout for me. Can you do that, Doctor?
I can do my best. Yeah. What do you? Probably best I don't know what you're gonna be doing.
If you hear anybody coming, if you see anybody come into this house, or Gladys coming out,
I'll engage them in conversation loudly.
Well, and just give a shout that the tomatoes aren't ripe. Okay.
In a garden of roses.
Right.
So, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
Just if tomatoes aren't ripe.
So,
At least I'm not going.
Dr. King, you're just going to stand in the garden. Is that your job?
You have a look at the garden. Sort of like potter around, sort of like have a look at the herbs and that sort of thing. If there are any herbs, because I would have thought there'd be herbs in the garden.
No, it's roses. It's a rose garden. There's just roses.
Oh, just roses.
No tomatoes.
No tomatoes. No herbs. Just he was a prize grower of roses. So like every available space in the garden, apart from the path from the gate to the front door, is full of roses.
He'll probably do that for a little bit and then wander around to the front, go out the gate and lean. Is there a garden wall sort of like that he could lean on, or he'll probably lean on that and be checking his pocket watch every what he feels like is every 5 minutes, but it's probably more like every minute or something like that.
Okay then, just roll for me a spot hidden.
Spotted.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yes, Mr. Weber, did you want to use luck?
Yeah, I'll use enough luck to make the...
So that'll be 3 points of luck. We'll go. So that'll be... Yeah, so while you're there, Dr. King, sort of like inspecting the roses and going outside and leaning against the wall, you do suddenly realise from your spot hidden roll that you are being watched. And as you look over, you notice that Gladys is by her window, and she's sort of like looking out at you. And when you look back at her, she sort of like pretends to be organising the net curtains or something.
He'll wave to her. With a friendly smile on his face, but after they were just having a chat.
She sort of like goes like that, and you can tell from her face that she seems somewhat puzzled. Mr. Weber, what are you up to?
I guess I was walking to the front door, and I want to, from the outside of the door, obviously, what appears to be, it's locked, I presume, with a metal lock on a wooden door.
Correct. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like there's anything blocking it from behind.
As in,
like somebody put up a chair against the doorknob.
No. Well, you push the door or you try the door and sort of like rattle it, and it just seems to be locked.
Okay. That helps. I just want to confirm that. Is the front door the weakest entry point? Would Aaron Weber think, or is there a window that I could probably pry open a little bit easier than, say, forcing this door?
I would say, whatever you choose, you're going to make a strength roll against it.
Fair. I guess I was looking for any weak point.
I am quite happy for you to tell me whereabouts you're going to break into this cottage.
I'm thinking the door, but I just have one more question before I commit crimes. I like to be prepared when I'm a criminal. The viewpoints to the front door am I visible to a bunch of the neighbor houses, or is it kind of...
Most definitely. The cottages opposite will be able to see you. Probably Gladys will not be able to see you because of she can see the garden and the gate and the wall from her vantage point, but she wouldn't be able to see the actual door.
Okay. Could I look over my shoulder or glance back and take a few moments, like maybe 2 minutes of just looking at the houses to see if anybody's watching me?
Yeah, make a spot hidden roll, and just to inform you, doing that action, you're becoming you look more and more suspicious.
That's fine.
Because now you're sort of like tried the door, and now sort of like looking around.
Yeah.
Roll your spot hidden. Yeah, you can see that. I mean, this sort of like village is quite. How can one put it? It's a typical English village, so people know everybody, and people almost like keep an eye out for other people. So yeah, you do see people across the way, sort of like almost like coming out of their cottages to close the front gate, even though the front gate is already shut. Or coming out and sort of like smelling a plant or something, and then sort of like just looking, and then when you sort of like look around, they sort of go, and go back to smelling it?
Well, I'll just shrug, and I'm going to walk back to Dr. King with a change of plans in my pocket. Roughly what time of day is it? Afternoonish, evening?
Yeah, it's coming up to. It's just gone 3, so it'll be coming up about 3:30, 4:45.
Okay, I'll beckon Dr. King to join me on the road as I'm kind of walking. Slowly.
Is the idea to go to the to find accommodation for the evening?
Sounds like a good idea.
It
And
does.
Dr. King, if he can, he wants to try. He's hoping that the tavern will have telegram or know where the telegram is for the village.
Yeah, the telegram is in the post office, which will open tomorrow morning. Post offices go to like 9 till lunchtime. So that'll be open tomorrow morning, not a problem. The tavern, the public house, has 2 rooms. It's very basic. It's literally a bed, a chair, a chamber pot, some water to wash in and shave the next day, and that's about it. You can buy evening food from the actual tavern. So are you planning on doing anything during the night apart from sleeping?
Yes. I guess some planning is in order because we got to get our accommodations first, as Dr. King said, so that we don't end up at the Wild Wyvern and having strange murder mysteries. My thoughts now, the best way to go about this, I think, is if we can somehow manage to convince Mr. Crouch's sister that we're able to help in some way, but I don't know where she lives.
We'd be able to find that out. But we can either, we can ask around at the tavern, or we can ask at the police station.
Yeah, that's what we'll have to do.
Yeah, I can. You can ask around the tavern, and probably when you go in, they sort of like say, "Why are you up here?" And you say, "Oh, I've been to the funeral." And they say, "Oh, yes, we had Herbert's sister stayed here last night, but she's travelled back straight after the funeral to where she lives. She doesn't actually live in the village." She lives elsewhere, so she sort of like headed back off, to where she lives.
Okay.
Do you perchance happen to know where that is? Is she local in Dover, or is she?
It's a small, another small village about. Quite a considerable carriage ride. Sorry, so say another half an hour in a carriage going in a different direction.
Okay, thank you very much. And we would be, if possible, we'd be requiring two rooms for board and breakfast in the morning.
Yeah, that's all done and dusted.
Okay, that's
fine. Well, looks like I don't think the police will let us into his house because it's not a crime scene.
Yeah, that would be a sensible assumption.
We can't get his sister to get on our side and give us a key. So I guess who else would have a key, or who else would have ownership of this house? I guess to let us in potentially. Because I feel if the moment we break in, what's that?
He lived on his own, didn't he? So his sister would probably have a key. The police might have a key.
Well, you figure because he has no relatives in this village, then the key is probably with the police, because they would have sealed the house,
Gotcha.
And then taken the key. So it's likely that the police have the key to the house.
Okay. That's good to know. Just need
I mean, would you be able to persuade the local policeman to let us have a look around?
I think that's the goal. It's just a matter of what's a good enough reason. I mean, beyond we're trying to, catch a murderer.
Failing that, we could. I mean, it's a bit out our way, but we could always go and try the sister and see if she's willing to give us permission and take us on the case. And that way, we could then go back to the police and say, she's given us permission. Here is the letter saying that she's happy for us to have a look around because we're investigating and that sort of thing. That might be sufficient to get us access into the house. It's a somewhat lengthy way around, but at least it's a potential way that's legitimate.
Yes, that's true.
There's always, there's always your idea. We could do, or that could be done.
Visiting the sister is a pretty long way about to try and solve a crime that nobody really seems interested in solving. I feel if, let's see if we can convince the constabulary to give us a key to continue the search.
The police are quite, they seem to have done a quite thorough job at the moment. I mean, especially from the report that you got, it's, and the thing is, the only lead that they have at the moment, which was mentioned, was that there was a really tall man, or a tall figure, should I say, at the bottom of the garden on the night.
I suppose the other way of coming at this is talking to my nephew again and his friend Toby, seeing if there's any other survivors of the group of the regiment that live locally that we could go and speak to. We might also be able to go and have a look at some of the records in the office, the regiment's office. Sort of like they might have names and addresses. They might have, sort of like survivors lists, so we know who in the regiment's still around. Those sorts of things.
Those are good ideas, but I believe we've missed your nephew. He's probably already heading back.
I do know where he lives, so we can call upon him tomorrow, if we want to return to London.
True.
Failing that, we can, if we can't catch him tomorrow, we can always invite him to the club again, and I'm sure he'll be more than willing to accept the invitation.
Yeah. Let's just see if we can't get a entry, and if we can't, then I agree with you. It's worthwhile to investigate the surviving members.
So this is going to be the next morning, then, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you sort of like slept throughout the night and you get up and you have your food, your breakfast, etc., you're heading out to the police to see whether or not they would give you a key to Herbert's cottage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So as always, why are you asking for? What's the reason behind you both having a key to Herbert's cottage?
Well, failing that, we don't necessarily have to have the key if the police are willing to walk us round.
Okay, then,
yeah.
So same question. Why?
Yeah, like lowering that is we'd be happy to have them, and the reason is we wanted to see if we could find any details that might potentially point towards who the tall man is.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some advice due to your law knowledge of police. One thing that police do not like to be told, is that they haven't done their job properly. And you figure that you're probably on a very narrow ledge, saying us two would like to find out who this murderer is. So we want to go and look at a house that the police have obviously searched.
Yeah.
To try to find things. You would have to get an extreme fast talk roll to actually get them to come across with you. And it might even have penalties, right? Because technically you don't have any connection with Herbert at all. You do with Alan, but not with Herbert. So I think if you wanted to do that, then you would have to roll an extreme fast talk roll.
I've got a different idea. Okay, and I'm pretty sure this isn't fast talk, and I know that this is directly deceit. I want to say that Toby, or no, not Toby. That Alan had wanted to stop by and pick up memoirs from his friend's house, and was wondering if we would be able to do it. And I kind of present this in a nonchalant, like I'm going in there, and my attitude is obviously you're going to say no, but he asked us to stop by, and if you're going to be willing to let us in to see if we can't find this whatever book he wanted.
And and I think what the police question was, I mean, normally if that was the case, then you would have a letter.
Yeah, that's why I'm being nonchalant and not a.
And the other thing that I would say to you is that Alan is not. If Herbert was Alan's uncle, then that would probably be correct. But he's not, and the contents of the house will now be covered underneath the will.
Gotcha.
So
it wouldn't be his property.
It's not his property, and I think the dodgy ground on is that he's not even technically a relative. I think I'm thinking it as if I turn up somewhere and suddenly asked to go into somebody who's died house and said, "Oh, I'm just a friend. Can I pick this up?" And I think the answer would be no. However, if you wish to roll your fast talk, and if you get an extreme success, then I'm quite happy for you to use your fast talk magic, and they actually they'll probably accompany you to the cottage. I don't think they would let you take anything out of the cottage, but you would be able to have a look inside.
That makes sense, and I agree with you. I'm just not coming up with the best lies.
So so roll your fast talk now. So you need to get, just like the one previous, you need to get extreme. Yeah.
Nobody's buying my line of garbage.
Do you wish to push it?
Push it.
So pushing it will allow you to have a roll again. If you succeed on the extreme, or if you succeed extreme roll, then that would be it. That's not a problem. If you got anything but a fail, if you failed on the second roll, then something dire would probably happen, something not good for you. And I would say that if you push the roll, that they almost like think that you are very much sort of like trying to gain entrance illegally, and sort of like write you up with a warning from the Dover Constabulary.
Well, it does look like that sounds like a nice resume builder there, but yeah. I'm gonna not push it because I don't. I'm just being like, you say so, then no, can't do it. I'll have to let them know. All good.
Okay.
So, whilst Mr. Webber was doing that, as long as it's late enough, Dr. King would have been sending some telegrams in the post office.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so is the plan now to get the train back?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so
Sorry.
you spend the rest of the next day sort of like travelling back, and when you get back to London and it's sort of like late afternoon, so you figure that the best place to go is probably the Carlton, and just sort of like sit down and have a quick sum up about what you think your next steps would be.
Yeah.
Well, I can invite my nephew over, sort of like either round to my house for afternoon tea or something, or we could ask him to dine here again and try and find out more information about the regiment and the other survivors and those sorts of things. We could even invite Toby as sort of like a toast, a farewell sort of meal for their deceased comrade.
If we invite Toby, he might not like a Carlton Club as a choice of venue.
That's true.
I've never been to your house, but I don't know, might or might not like.
I think Toby's probably more the sort of person that Webber you would hang out with. Dr. King, you.
I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean you're incredibly upper class from the last investigation. So I think it's more. I think you don't see Toby in the same light as Webber does. Webber, you see him as a human being. I think Dr. King, especially with his social standing and how he views people, I think he would see Toby more of a butler or a servant or something like
Serving
that.
class, yeah.
I thought you were going to say like a slab of meat.
No, not that bad.
I'm a doctor. What are you on about? That's the only one that's a slab of meat. We can always. I can always invite my nephew round for a meal. We can ask him some more questions and those sorts of things.
Yeah,
Try and
good
find
idea.
out however many of the company have survived.
Okay then. So, Mr. Webber, what Dr. King can invite Alan to a soiree or a meal of some description. Mr. Webber, what are you planning on doing? Anything or just accompany Dr. King?
Depends on how much time I have. Do I have several hours?
Oh yes,
Presumably between this time.
Most definitely.
Then I am hitting the library like an English
And what are you trying to find out?
I would like to do some research on, I believe it's called the Buffs, the military group that all these surviving members were a part of.
Yeah.
My main questions here would be just any known information about them, any known information about wars or locations in, I believe it was Africa that they went to, anything spectacular in their history or noteworthy. Something majorly noteworthy, I guess, to me would be if they went somewhere where there was a lot of violence.
Right. Okay then. So roll your library use. Now, just to let you know, what I'm looking for. If you failed this roll, you'll still get some information. It's not that you don't find anything. What I'm looking for is how much information you get. So if you fail the roll, then you just get in the basics. If you're success, then you get a little bit more if you're hard, a little bit more if you're extreme. Okay.
Excellent. Here's my roll.
Okay. Do you wish to push the roll? Or adjust it? 30 points.
I only have 9 points of luck.
Right.
So I'm gonna push it. I'm gonna try pushing it, and I might regret this. That's still the green button, yeah?
Yeah, you just roll it again. Okay,
Big money.
Hang on. All right. Okay, so what that means now is that you've got that success, which is fine. If you had failed that roll, then somebody would have been aware that you were actually making inquiries about it. Somebody connected to the storyline. So that would be recognised. Okay, so here's the information that you find out about them. Now, I have to premise this to you guys and to the stream that the buffs actually did exist. Okay, but what I'm saying here is not factually correct. It's not referring to the first buffs company or anything like that. It's just that the name is used, and that's what we're actually doing. Okay then, so let me start off with that the buffs are quite distinguished and have quite a distinguished history, dating back right there to the 1572. So they've been around a long time. To bring it up to date, they really served in the Sudan, in Africa, in the 1880s. That's where they were until almost like mid 1880s. So, and then they returned. The commanding the 1st Battalion, they were in India to start off with, and then they moved across to the Sudan and southern Egypt, etc. Commanding the 1st Battalion was Colonel Nicholas Hollingsworth, who used to be called Fearless Nick by his men. Sorry. There seems to be other people in the company, although they're not all named. However, you do notice that 4 people's names do come up, and those are Alan, Toby, Herbert Crouch, and Oland Reynolds. Okay, so those people. The only other person that you see in the list of men that you recognise is Major Gower, which is the person who helped Toby get to the funeral today. Interestingly, there's a slight little bit of a footnote that you find. Somebody has scribbled on it that the ex-company's favourite hangout in London is the Army and Navy Club. So that's like a social club like your Carlton. It's actually situated in Pall Mall, which you recognise is a short distance from Alan Pace's tailoring shop. I'll just be 2 ticks because some things just fallen over in the kitchen. I just need to see what it is. Won't be a moment.
Sounds good. We'll just carry the stream.
This is where we see Inwell's coming back with a green tentacle around his throat, going, "Ah!"
Oh, it's just a green tentacle. He's got the eldritch horrors under control.
I'm assuming that's called a Cthulhu with green tentacles and those sorts of things.
I mean, I would presume Cthulhu has those tentacles. Mm-hmm. They're green. They might be blue. I haven't met the guy.
I don't think I want to.
They always seem green in his depictions, though, or at least like sea green.
That like turquoisey.
Yeah.
Turquoise.
I'm hoping that what we haven't uncovered here is a night gaunt, because that would kind of ruin our time. I don't know if you're familiar with night gaunts. No. Like it's like this oily black guy with wings and a tail, and they hunt at night, and I think they're tall. I want to say they were tall, or that they're rather short.
Well, Dr. King probably would just scoff at that, and just he's probably thinking it's someone in the regiment doing a cover-up for something.
It's kind of what I think too.
Maybe the colonel or the major doing a organising a cover up for something, because they're the only people that have been mentioned, and to be mentioned in dispatches, which is what that is, being mentioned in the newspaper. It's quite a feat. So something's going to happen.
I'm back. It was the dishes on the sink side. They'd all tipped. They were balanced precariously, and they all clattered on the floor. But there was a plate that smashed, so I picked it up. It's all right. It's just a plate. So I think that Army and Navy Club in Pall Mall, and then that's all the information that you can find on the buffs, and like previously mentioned, nothing to do with the real buffs. Okay, so let's jump back to Dr. King. You are having dinner or luncheon with your nephew Alan Pace. So we'll assume that you were going to have lunch with him, or luncheon with him in any case. Yeah. So it's just be rearranged, and so you're sat having lunch with him in the Carlton.
Brilliant. Okay. So like whilst eating, Dr. King will say, so I trust apart from the recent news, you're feeling all right, and business is going well.
He says, "Oh yes," he says, "business is going very fine. I'm in the topmost health. Thank you very much."
Oh, that's good to hear. I always inquire after, as you know, your health. It's it's important to me that you're doing well.
Oh yes, very well indeed. Thank you.
That's good. On a side note, we met one of your colleagues yesterday for the funeral. Was it nice seeing him again? I assume you probably don't see him that often.
Oh only at the Army and Navy Club, but yes, it was very nice to have a chat with him.
That's good. Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, do you manage to meet up with many of your old fellow, your comrades in arms every now and again?
No. He says we've all moved on from that company. Sometimes there's people at the Army and Navy Club that we know, but I wouldn't say that we go out on luncheons together or anything like that.
Oh, okay. Have you managed? So you don't really keep in contact with very many of them then?
He says no. He says we just like have luncheon or meet at the passing in the club or something like that.
Okay. So apart from the recent tragic news about two of your comrades passing away, there's been no other communication from any of them, or that sort of thing? Has anybody else reached out to you because of the news?
No, we like I've said, I might see them when I'm frequenting the Army and Navy Club, but I haven't had any telegrams from anyone or anything like that.
Oh, okay. If you don't mind me asking, you seem to be speaking quite fondly of your old colonel. Was he? Would you mind telling me a little bit more about him?
Yes. Which colonel?
Your commanding officer, whilst you were in the buffs.
Oh, yeah. Colonel Hollingsworth.
I can't remember his name, but if that's the one, I think that's what his name was, wasn't it? That you mentioned.
Well, he was a fine officer.
Was he particularly noteworthy? Is he did he treat you guys well? Was he brave? That sort of thing. Apart from a fine officer.
He looks somewhat confused now, and he says. Why do you need to know so much information about the colonel?
Sorry. I was just.
Fast talk.
Push it.
Push it, and he gets up. I'm never talking to you again,
No,
Uncle. You're dead to me.
yes, Colonel Hollingsworth is a fine man. Tell me, how's your practice going?
Oh, it's going quite well. I've had a couple of new people.
Yeah, and the rest of luncheon goes on making small talk, and Alan is very grateful that you've sort of like paid for his meal. And after about an hour of chatting away with small talk, he sort of like mentions that he needs to get back to the shop and to finish off business for the day, and he politely gets up and leaves.
Of course, and do feel free to drop by whenever you're in the neighbourhood.
Yeah, he's quite accepting of that. Did you see the bit of information that I sent you, Mr. Pickles?
Yes.
Yeah.
I sent you a little thumbs up.
All right. So I don't have it open, so I was waiting for it to beep, but it didn't. Okay. Yeah. So next plan of action, gentlemen.
I think we probably need to meet up and have another chat.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you've met back up at the Carlton.
Okay.
I'll share all my notes on the buffs, particularly including information on India, Sudan, Africa, their travel line. That I found information on Colonel Nicholas Hollingsworth, Fearless Nick.
Yeah. So you share all that information with Mr. Webber. Sorry, Dr. King. Sorry. So you both you both are privy to the information that you both collected and heard.
Did you know that the Army and Navy Club has roughly 2,400 members?
I did not know, although my nephew did mention that he frequents that occasionally, and that he occasionally meets sort of like members of old members of the company there and that sort of thing. But they don't tend to sort of meet up regularly.
2,400 members. That's going to be a lot of different units, and
I would have thought so. Yes, it would be sort of anyone in the area that has been in the Army or the Navy would be able to be eligible for membership.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's something we should ask Peabody upon his return, if he has membership there.
No, Peabody doesn't, but somebody like Alan can give you access.
Okay.
So you can go in as his guests, just as he's come into the Carlton as your guests. I mean,
okay.
Generally, being a member of the club costs you about £3 to £16 a year, and then you have to have an initial entrance fee anywhere from £5 up to £40. So it's nothing for the poor, And remember, most of these have like private libraries. That's probably where you did your research, Mr. Webber. Also, it gives you excellent social contacts, reading rooms, meals. And even the meals are usually charged a little bit above cost pricing, But
Of course.
Hey, there's also likely to be things like billiards and seating areas, etc., there as well. So you could go to you could get get Alan to gain you access to the Army and Navy Club.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
About people and being alive. Colonel Nicholas Hollingsworth and Major Gower, are they both alive?
As far as you are aware.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I guess. And would I have found any kind of reference to suggest that they might be in London, or would it be silly to assume that they might be at the Army and Navy Club at any point?
I mean, they if they're going to be a member of any club, it's probably be the Army and Navy Club. And you do remember that, Toby was a little bit he only got here because of Gower's money. So, and you know that Toby comes from London, so it would seem suitable.
Yeah. Major Gower's. If Major Gower is alive, and I'm curious what he might know on this. Seems strange that he'd pay for Toby to go to the funeral
and not
he
go
didn't.
himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be able to get your nephew to help us out and get us into the Army and Navy Club?
I can ask him. He might be prepared to invite us there as guests for a meal or something. Especially if I offer to pay again.
Huh. Well then, I think we should see if we can't find any more people. See if we can't solve this murder.
It's interesting though that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Weber, that three of the 6 people that have been mentioned in the newspapers, was it 3? 2 of them have passed away recently in mysterious circumstances.
2 of them very close together.
Seems somewhat coincidental.
If there's a pattern, then I'm sure somebody's going to be dying soon.
I hope it's not my nephew. He's a good-natured soul.
So Alan arranges for you to go to the Army and Navy club. I keep wanting to say store because we have the Army and Navy store, Army and Navy club. It's actually this address is 36 Pall Mall. It's just opposite, just north of Buckingham Palace, where the Queen lives. Just in case you didn't know that.
I know that.
I knew you knew that, but I didn't know whether or not Mr. Pickles knew that.
Some of us are very American.
Yes, it does have quite a huge membership, and all the members there are from either the Army or the Navy, none from the RAF, because it hasn't. I don't think it's
not in existence yet.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not started till 1917, 1918.
So you sort of like meet Alan outside, because obviously he has to take you in. He has to sort of like sign you in. And when you he sort of like opens the first double doors and you go in, and there's a sort of like a little porch area that has like a little porter's hatch. Yeah. It's open, a room that somebody sits in just to keep notice, make a note of who's coming out and who's coming in. And as you go in, you sort of like take off your hats and coats, and there's a cloak room that you can leave it. And you look inside the little the little desk thing, and Alan looks in and says, evening, Mr. Norton. I've brought my friends here to the club. I hope that's all right. And you notice that it's actually Toby Norton. He's looks even more worse for wear than what he normally does. He's definitely dressed in butler outfit or waiter outfit, or he's definitely not a member of the club. He's definitely some kind of help, and that's what it is. And you sort of like come inside, and the mist and the fog has just started, to congregate outside in the streets, and there's a nice mist and fog sort of like brewing, and you sort of like go in, and Toby sort of like says, "Oh, they can come in, but only because I know him. I know them both. After that incident the other week, we're a bit wary. But no, well, I know these people, and they could come in." And Alan sort of like says, "Oh, thank you very much." And you walk in and get a table and start to have lunch.
What incident was he referring to?
Toby. And just before we go into it, can you both? Who's got the highest power out of each of you?
Power 50.
You beat me by 5.
Okay, that's characteristics, isn't it?
So, Dr. King, can you roll, please, a luck roll? Again, it doesn't matter if it fails. It's just graded about what you find out here tonight. Yeah. So just roll your luck. Brilliant. Okay, then. So, do you wish to adjust it at all?
No.
No? Do you wish to push it?
Definitely not.
Okay, cool. Okay, then. So, you sort of like sit down and I think the question, Mr. Webber, was what was the incident? And Alan sort of like says, oh, do you know, it's a bit of a fuss about nothing. I mean, all they seem to be worried about, and you will understand when I tell you this, that I mean, it's nothing. It's just that some of the club members have reported somebody outside, almost like lurking across the way, mostly at nights. A rather tall, powerful-looking figure that just sort of like stands opposite and seems to be almost like, well, I mean, they seem to be keeping an eye on the place. That's what people are suspicious about. But, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's just somebody, it's either one of the ruffians from the streets trying to find a suitable person to murder, or I think, to be honest with you, I think it's actually somebody who's trying to get membership and is probably trying to make friends, or, you know, even seduce somebody into getting it. But I wouldn't worry about it, Mr. Webber. It really is nothing at all.
It sounds like nothing. You said there are a lot of instances. This just happened once, right? It's not a big deal.
No, well, a few incidences, but you know, once, I mean, and he sort of like leans closer and he says, well, you know how it is. You know, it's not as if this is an alcohol-free zone. And some of them, and he looks round to a rather rotund man, can put quite a lot of it away throughout the night. Toby appears with some menus and says, you know, what would you like? He seems to be almost like in that servant mode here. And you sort of like get some information. You get some meals and you sit down with a nice glass of wine with your meal, and then, you know, with a nice port after it, just in case you get gout or something like that. And it's while you're sat there in more comfortable chairs now, high back chairs with wings, you know, coming out here, and you're sort of like sat down relaxing, and all of a sudden there's almost like a shout from the entranceway, and you're sort of like on the side to see it, but Alan can see it as well, and also you hear this, oh, Alan, oh, so pleased to see you here today. Oh, hiya. And this rather short, stout, middle-aged man with sort of like ruddy features, and he has a big red beard and a mustache, and he sort of like comes over and he says, oh, Alan, so spiffing to see you, and he whacks sort of like Alan on the back, and Aaron sort of like goes like this, and he sort of like says, oh, did you have the trout? Did you have the trout? I'm very suspicious of the trout. I'm really concerned that they might be getting it from the Thames. And you know what goes into the Thames, don't you? Every bloody chamber pot in the whole of London, I think. And Alan says, well, actually, I think the good doctor had the trout.
He's going green at this thought at the moment.
The doctor? Well, you know the famous saying, doctor, cure yourself. I think you might need it. Definitely keep the chamber pot a little bit handy tonight if I was you, Doctor. Please, obviously you're a doctor. And he sort of like thrusts out his hand. And you sort of like reach out and this almighty grip, Dr. King, as he sort of like grips it and shakes it, and you just sort of like, and then he says, and who might you be? He turns to you, Mr. Webber, and Alan says, oh, and this is Mr. Webber. Mr. Webber, thank you. Mr. Webber's a policeman. Oh, you're a policeman, a constable. Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. How do you do, Constable Webber?
Not quite a constable. I'm an inquiry agent.
Oh, you're one of these private guys.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Looking to solve problems.
Yes, well, let's just hope you're a little bit better than the constabulary. Don't think they could solve a crime even if it came up and pushed themselves in their beards. Very inept. They are absolutely rubbish. So, how are you, Alan? He sort of like says, I'm very well. Very well. Gentlemen, this is Major John Gower. You probably remember Toby talking about it. Oh, yes, poor Toby. Poor Toby, such a letdown. You know, never really office material. You know, never could climb the ranks that high. But we keep him well supplied here. You know, most of the old members of the regiment are very keen to, you know, toss him the odd shilling now and again, maybe even a guinea if he's lucky. But, you know, we believe in looking after our own here.
It's a very admirable thing to do.
A letdown. That's strange. He seemed to look up to you.
Most people do, my fine man. I am a major, after all, and you can see from my general physique that I'm still in my prime here. You know, give me a rifle with a bayonet in it, I'll run it through any of our enemies. Yes, it's nice to be British in this day and age, I tell you. Yes, and Alan says to him, so, are you up in London? Oh, yes. My wife, Maureen, and a few of our servants have just come up to our mansion in Belgrave Square. Yes, you know, the estate out in rural Suffolk. You know, it is quite nice, but let's face it, doesn't have the prestige of this club that, you know, we have. And Alan sort of like goes, would you like to sit down? Oh, I thought you would never ask, my boy. Yes, of course. And he looks around and says, Toby, a chair, please, a chair. Oh, yes. And he sort of like gets himself in and he sort of like squeezes himself between the two arms and sort of like leans back, and there's a slight, as one of his buttons sort of like gives way, and just sort of like, but oh, bloody hell. Oh, no. You can't get the tailor nowadays. I should come to your shop, Alan. It'd be miles better there. But your buttons don't pop off as soon as I take a slight breath in. Oh, no, Major Gower, not at all. Please do come by. I suppose I'll have suitable rates. You know, I don't expect to be. Oh no, Mr. Major Gower, of course not. You will not have to pay the full price. Oh yes, jolly good show. Thank you very much, Alan. So, tell me, what are we toasting? And he sort of like clicks his finger. Port, Toby, port. And Toby brings a little a silver tray on with one glass of port. He says, well, what are we toasting?
To no more members of the Buffs dying.
Oh, well, let's just say, Herbert, memoirs and roses, good grief, my man. Oh, I'm surprised he probably didn't choke himself after the excitement we've engaged with, you know, real combat, you know, and, you know, roses and memoirs. How can words fail me? Words. I thought he was more of an active man, to be honest with you.
Well, seemed that his roses were winning awards. At least he
Yes,
was great at it.
roses should be left for women, I think. We men should be engaging in more physical, like billiards, or shooting. And
I did
shooting.
hear that he was quite active with the local rugby, coaching the local rugby team.
Yes, coaching. I don't think he can probably play anymore. Not after the gunshot, Shame where it hit him, but never mind, At least it wasn't the most important area of his body, but very close, I think. Yes.
Gunshot?
Who else has been dying? He says to you all. Who else has been dying from the company?
Orland.
Alan says, the train incident. Oh yes. Oh, that was a bloody mess, wasn't it? Bloody mess. That's all I could say. I had an appointment and there were no trains at all. Everything stopped. Who would have thought? One dead corpse on the track and that's it. The trains just stop.
It's a shame. Do you know of anybody who might have disliked either of these men? I mean, for somebody growing roses and writing memoirs.
Well, apart from probably the east coast of Africa, I mean, we were never very popular over there. No, not at all. Some of the campaigns in the Sudan were quite horrific. Yes, I don't think we're very popular over there. Maybe some of the French as well, but I'm not going to go into that now. Tell me, Mr. Webber, your accent seems very strange. I'm trying to place it. Is it India?
Not quite India.
Oh. It's not the Sudan, is it? I wouldn't be very happy if you're from the Sudan.
No, sir. I'm from America.
Oh, America. Oh,
from the
yes.
States.
Yes. Well, I suppose we can't all be lucky and be born and bred in England. I suppose some other people have to come from other countries. But don't worry, the empire is spreading nicely. We will soon be in every country. And, we will be... Long live Victoria, that's all I can say. And he sort of carries on about various activities. Is there anything you would like to ask or say to Major Gower?
Yes, I'm just having a hard time placing the words. I want to ask him about the incident. Actually, the incident mentioned by Toby. I heard that there was somebody stalking the exterior of the building. Tall man. You know anything about this, Major?
The lurker? You mean the lurker?
Yeah.
Oh, well. I mean, who wouldn't lurk outside the Army and Navy Club? That's all I can say. Oh, yes. Well, to be honest with you, I think it's some ruffian keeping an eye out, waiting to pounce on the unsuspected. You better not pounce on me, I tell you. Oh, no. If he pounces on me, then that will be it. He will probably receive the flat end of my walking stick here. And he sort of like a bang on the table with it.
I heard it might be somebody looking for entry into this club. Is there a long wait list?
Well, I think I don't think there's a waiting list at all now. I think it's more a case that you have to be of the right, how shall we say, breeding. Definitely the right breeding. But, the only person that you actually have to almost like convince is, the boss, the colonel. He's relatively in charge of everything here. Great shame that he's not around too often, but you know what it's like. These men are very busy. Very busy indeed.
What would they be busy with?
Well, his estate for once. I mean, that's quite an estate. Not too sure why he has such high walls around it, but hey, Hey, he's the colonel. He can do what he wants.
I suppose so.
So, Alan, how's the shop? Oh, very, very, very well, thank you, Major. Yes, doing very well. I must come round someday. I'm in need of a new waistcoat. Something not too flashy. I don't want it to be taken away from my physique and general looks. Prefer to have the women looking at me rather than my waistcoat, if you get my meaning. That's what the wife always says to me. Always better to look at you than your waistcoat. Oh, yes. I have a well-trained, I tell you.
Oh, yes, I'm sure my nephew will be able to more than supply you with a decent waistcoat. He's a very able tailor.
Most definitely, John. Major Gower, sorry. Yes, most definitely. So, is there any other questions you would like to ask?
Kind of a question to you as the DM, or keeper, I should say.
Yeah.
Wandering around here, I guess Weber stops kind of paying attention after he's asked his questions and is more of looking at the people wandering around, if there's anybody walking past and whatnot, or coming and going. People's height, that's what I'm looking at.
There's nobody exceptionally tall.
Dang it.
They all tend to be. I mean, the Major Gower is only about 5'9", so like my height. He makes up for it in girth though, and quite significantly. And he's downed one of his port, and he's just summoning over. He says, "Oh, you can never get the staff when you need another port. Norton, port here." And Toby comes over and says, "Oh yes, sorry, Major. Did you give the flowers? Did you give the flowers over?" "Oh yes, I did. Yes, it's actually I gave them over. They were very, very, very grateful of it. Good. I thought it would be. I thought I would match his garden and send him some roses. Oh, poor Herbert. Great man. The shame, like I said, roses and memoirs. I mean, come off it. You probably can't get a better hint than that, can't you?" Anything else you would like to ask?
Is there a hall that we saw, or an area that we saw, that would have pictures, or, well, actually,
yeah, there's various pictures of people and regiments, and a whole lot of people, stood to attention. Individual portraits of people in the whole area. I mean, it's definitely the Army and Navy Club. You can tell just by looking at the walls.
how about the buffs? Is there would I be able to find a portrait of the buffs?
You're probably going to find a hard time you actually finding one. You can maybe ask either the Major, or it's quite a big place. The Army.
Yeah, and I don't know the differences between the different units, so I would have a hard time. I'll ask the Major. You wouldn't happen to know if there is a picture or portrait of the buffs in their heyday, would you?
Oh yes. Norton. And Toby comes over. Yes, Major. Bring the picture of the buffs. And Alan goes, "Oh no, not the pictures of the buffs again. Yes, bring it over. Bring it over." And it's sort of like it's about this big, and it's all framed, and it's got a glass front on it, and you can see all the men and officers. And he sort of he turns around to you, Dr. King, and says, "Go on, pick me out. I'm the handsome one."
Dr. King, can I make a luck roll for this?
Yes, you certainly can.
He points to someone who he thinks is suitably sort of like similar, and says, and in sort of what he thinks is an officer's uniform, and goes, "This one?"
He goes, "Bloody hell, man! Bloody hell! That's a private! Do you not know your ranks? Bloody hell, I'm absolutely flabbergasted. Completely flabbergasted. This is me, this fine figure here. Can you see? Can you see the likeness now?
Oh, totally. Yes, definitely. It's a very good license.
He looks a lot younger. He doesn't have the beard or the mustache, and he's incredibly thinner and more toned.
I must say the beard is a good
addition.
Yes.
Yes, I thought so. A much better addition nowadays. So here's the Colonel. There's Colonel there. I'm just stood next to him, around about there. And you can see, there's Private Norton there at the back. You could just make out his face. He sort of like gets closer. We tried to block it, but failed miserably at the last moment when the flash went off. Yes, there's the Colonel, Fearless Nick. There he is. Oh, great man. There's Orlando Reynolds with his medic outfit all there ready. And yes, who else have we got there? Yes. Now, this person here, and he points to somebody who seems to be in civvy outfits. This is Jeffrey Jordan. He's a friend of the Colonel's, but he never made it into the regiment. Something about his eyesight. I'm not too sure what. Or was it that he had flat feet? It was one or the other. Anyway, he was more of a recorder. Somebody who came around and recorded our exploits. Here's Elliot. Elliot there. Elliot Sangster. He's a soldier there, but he hung around with the medics a lot. I think he's a doctor now, Dr. King. Are you aware of Dr. Sangster?
Is there a role in Wills that I could do because I would have thought I'd know some of the doctors in the
roll your education. Yeah, you do. He's a practicing doctor.
I've heard of him. I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yes, and that's Jeffrey. Jeffrey Jordan that I mentioned. Who else have we got in here? Oh, there's Crouch. Look. There he is, look. Oh, pompous prat. But yeah, nice man, apart from the roses. Yes, and that's... Oh, Alan, there you are, look. You look about 6. No, maybe 7. Well, you really need to grow a beard, man. Come off it. Yeah, and he sort of like spends some moments telling you of the tales of how great the regiment was. And how fantastic it was.
Does he give us any stories about Fearless Nick?
Oh yeah, Fearless Nick, the Colonel, is apparent in every single story. The Major has real talks of him really fondly and says how brave he is and how intimidating he could be to the lower ranks, but how that was his job. And even if he had to have harsh words with some of the privates, that they would improve and they deserved it. They probably did something wrong as well, but, he was a fine man.
He sounds it. My friend here, Mr. Webber, came across a news article about you, and that you were mentioned in...
A news article? Mr. Webber, please tell me. I don't think I've been in the Times. Mr. Webber?
I only have 2 newspapers in my pocket.
It's the one you told me about just a moment ago.
Oh, that was in the library. I was just reading up on the buffs. I like to stay well informed.
Oh, you've been reading up about the regiment? Oh, that's jolly smithing of you. Do you think you could be in the regiment yourself?
Unlikely at this point.
Yes, he sort of like looks you up and down. Yes, maybe work out a bit more. Maybe work out and maybe grow a beard. I find that very, very helpful. Oh, well. And he sort of like pulls out his pocket watch and says, "Oh, well, I better be heading off soon because, well, probably now because Maureen, well, she's one of those girls, you know, who says I've woken her up when I get home, but I know darn well she's been at the sherry since about 8 o'clock. She'll just be pretending, yes, a typical woman, as you well know. So yes, so I better be off."
Yes, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and we'll have to return the favour at the Carlton at some point.
Oh, the Carlton. I don't think that would be necessary at all. I don't frequent clubs like the Carlton. This is my club, as you can see, very superior to most of the clubs if not all the clubs in London. You know, if you're not a member of the Army and Navy Club, boy, you're not a member of anything. Isn't that right, Norton? Yes, Major, completely right. Completely right. And Norton seems to be tidying up other tables, and the Major goes, "Oh, Norton, here, have a sixpence." And he sort of like throws a coin across, and Norton sort of like takes it, incredibly embarrassed, and says, "Oh, thank you, Major, thank you." "Right, I better be off." Alan sort of like turns to you and says, I think we all better be off. Do you not think? The port was very nice. Yes. Are you all right to go, Uncle and Mr. Webber?
We can, of course, yes, and we'll have to meet up again sometime soon.
Yes, that'd be absolutely really good. And you sort of like all walk out to the entrance hall together, and Norton comes scurrying out and sort of like says, "Here, Major, here's your coat, and oh, thank you, Norton. Yes, and my cane, thank you, and my top hat, lovely, all ready to go." So he turns around to you guys and says, "Alan, I'll come to your shop tomorrow or the day after that, and you can measure me up. I'm normally in a very small size. You know, don't let this bulk here confuse you. It's all muscle. If I breathe in and turn sideways, that's it. I'll be gone. You know, so yes, probably a small, maybe stretching to some kind of a medium, if that's necessary." And he sort of like says, "Well, goodbye, gentlemen. Nice to meet you. Do pop by to my house any time that you wish." And you know really that this is just a social way of saying you're not really welcome, but it's the done thing to say. And yes, I'll be off to see Maureen. And he sort of like heads off out the door, and Norton comes and gives you your coats and bag, your hats and everything, and you sort of like buckle up and make sure you're all nice and cozy inside. And as you step outside into the darkness, you notice that this fog is really thick now, really sort of like thick, and almost like it's spread up from the floor. It's not actually it's not like a low hanging mist. It's right the way up, and you know, even the light, the gas lamps on the street is still sort of like well, it's just literally lighting things up, and sort of like that murky, misty way. So it's not actually anything. Technically, it's not making anything a lot better, but you can still see, and you sort of like head off, and Alan goes one way, and you guys head off the other way, and you're sort of like walking back towards your accommodations, and you live sort of like close, and you'll walk to one point and then split off. And as you walk down, could you all make a listen roll for me, please?
Absolutely.
I'm going to use 16 points of luck and luck that, I think.
Okay, so cross the cross the 16 off. And yeah, and you get, as you're walking down, you're sort of like busy talking, all wrapped up in your coats and everything. You hear, Dr. King, you hear a scream, a cry up ahead, from the mist, from the fog. It's not a woman's cry. It's literally a man's cry, and it's almost like a cry that is cut off to almost like a gurgle as the cry comes off. And you both sort of like think, oh my God, what's happening? And you sort of like head down the road to the scene where this cry has come from. And what you actually see is that there's a set of railings, and they're about bigger than your head in height up. And you suddenly, as you get closer and closer and closer, a nearby street lamp is illuminating the picture, and you see that Major Gower has been impaled on top of the railings. He looks something.
Oh dear!
Like that. Sanity rolls, please.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's not good if a doctor can't look at that.
Okay, so you both fail your sanity rolls. So, Mr. King, you lose 1 point of sanity, and Aaron, you lose 3 points of sanity, and you also hear the cry as you get there. Some of the local constabulary arrive as well. After hearing the whistle, the cry, you hear various whistles come out, and yours is sort of like stood there, and what one of the constables says, "Get a ladder, quick, get a ladder!" And
Dr. King's gonna try and push his way forward, shouting, "I'm a doctor! Let me have a look."
Yeah, well,
He's probably dead from that. But
you can sort of like see that, and there's blood and there's a gurgle, and you sort of like get there. Roll your medicine roll.
oh god.
Yeah, you just think.
The dice are not with me tonight.
You just think, being impaled like that, that's it. It's almost instant death. And the ladder arrives, and one of them comes up, and one of the constable gets up, and they're trying to decide what to do, because they're thinking, do they try to lift him up off the rail, or what do they do? And then
Would
all of a
Dr.
sudden,
King be able to help with that?
well, all of a sudden you hear one of the bobbies who's up the ladder says, "Oh my God, he's still alive!" Sanity rolls, please. Okay, you both lose 1 point of sanity as you suddenly think, how could anybody still be alive when impaled on the railings like that? And also the amount of pain he must actually be in, then that's it. So yeah, and you're sort of like really close to him, Dr. King, and he seems to be muttering something, and he seems to be muttering it over and over. And what he says, Abadan, but it was real,
Abadan.
alive. And
Okay.
suddenly there's a out of his throat, out of his mouth, as almost like blood that was obviously being kept down actually sort of like burst out of his mouth, and you suddenly look up and turn round to to Mr. Webber, and shake your head, because the great Mr. Major Gower has said his last words. I've typed into the chat what he actually said, so you can see it. And that seems to be a suitable point, gentlemen, to leave it for tonight. So you're both in a state of shock. Both of you are not very good in these situations. You tend to have
too many thoughts thinking of the situation.
And the great Major John Gower appears to have been killed. You do the height of those rails for somebody to actually lift somebody onto it. Probably somebody very tall
and with superhuman strength.
Oh.
And reflexes. Or he got pushed from the top of a stagecoach. However, he got on top of a stagecoach.
Well, maybe next week you will find the answers to all your questions. Okay, so
or maybe it's the illusionist doing magical tricks on.
He was tall, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, but not that tall. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the start of your second investigation, and hopefully you've got lots of notes and you can start to piece together what actually is going on. Hopefully Mr. Peabody will be back with us next week. We play Call of Cthulhu on a Thursday night at 7 o'clock BST time, and on Saturday we play Mithras, which is a fantasy setting with almost like RuneQuest rules, but it's not RuneQuest. And then on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock BST time we play Shadowrun. So that's 3 good role-playing sessions to tune into. Also, just so you know, I stream Elder Scrolls Online. I'm on vacation at the moment, so it's probably best to give me a follow so you can see when I'm streaming. Currently, I'm enjoying the Battlegrounds with my Sork, but that'll change by probably 2 minutes later because I tend to flip. But anyway, do come along and enjoy the fun. I will be so we will be back on Saturday at 7 o'clock BST time for 1900 hours for the Mithras. So until then, I would just like to say to each and every one of you, please remember to be who you are and say what you feel, because the people who mind don't matter and the people who matter don't mind. Have fun, and I will catch you all later. And until then, consider yourself well and truly waffled. Have fun, guys. Bye.